So listen closely. When darkness wraps the world and dreams begin to stir, you've arrived at the right place. Welcome to Between Dreams and Shadows, the sanctuary of stories that live between sleep and the unknown. Here, every tale is more than a story. It's a portal to hidden worlds, forgotten secrets, whispers from beyond, and shadows that speak as your eyes begin to close. If you're drawn to mysteries, haunting legends, and stories that send shivers down your spine, this channel is your new nighttime ritual. Before we begin, I invite you to become part of this growing nightbound community. Subscribe now and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a tale. New stories drop regularly, always under the veil of night. Like this video if you enjoy that chill before sleep. It helps this channel grow and lets me bring you deeper, darker stories. Drop a comment below. Have you ever had a strange dream or felt something watching in the dark? Your experience might inspire the next tale now. Take a deep breath, turn off the lights, leave the world behind, and get ready to drift between dreams and shadows. Setting the atmosphere, the clock struck to 17 a.m. Outside, the wind hummed softly against the windows, its melody brushing past the old wooden frames like a lullaby, sung by someone who had long forgotten the words. The street lamp cast a pale yellow light over the front lawn, flickering just enough to keep you guessing whether it was the bulb or your nerves playing tricks on you. Inside the house, everything was quiet. Too quiet. I had moved here 6 months ago, just me and my daughter, Eliza. After the divorce, I wanted a fresh start, somewhere peaceful. This old farmhouse seemed perfect, isolated, quiet, affordable. Almost too affordable. The first few nights were hard. Elisa had trouble sleeping. She missed her old room, her friends, her dad. So, I would lie next to her, listening to the night, telling her stories until her breath deepened and softened. But eventually, she settled in. Kids are resilient, they say. But this wasn't about resilience. It started last week. I woke up in the middle of the night to the sound of whispering. At first, I thought it was the wind, maybe the pipes, but no, it was too rhythmic, too intentional. I followed it down the hall to Eliza's room, and there she was fast asleep, but her lips were moving, and the words, they weren't hers. Not just in meaning, not just in tone, but the voice, it sounded like it belonged to someone else entirely. It was too deep, too measured, almost curious. I stood there frozen, not wanting to wake her, not even sure if I could. Then, silence. Her mouth closed. She turned over, as if nothing had happened. The next morning, she remembered nothing. She smiled, ate her cereal, and talked about school as if a stranger hadn't spoken through her mouth hours before. I told myself it was nothing. Stress, exhaustion, maybe even a dream. But dreams don't follow you into the daylight. Not like this one did. Since that night, the house began to feel different. You know that sensation when someone's watching you from behind, but you turn and no one's there? That became constant. I'd glance at corners where shadows pooled a little too long. I'd feel cold drafts in rooms with no open windows. My phone battery drained faster. The hallway lights flickered sometimes, but only when I passed under them, and every night. 2:17 a.m. Elisa would talk again. Whispers that didn't belong to her. They weren't loud, not yet, but they were getting clearer, more confident. And now, as I lie here staring at the crack in my bedroom door, just wide enough to see the hallway light flicker once again, I know something is coming. Something that already knows our names. The first signs of disturbance, it happened again last night, at exactly 2:17 a.m. But this time, it wasn't just whispering. It was laughter, soft, slow, like someone amused by something. Only they understood. I rushed to Eliza's room, expecting to find her sitting up in bed, possessed by some unknown hysteria, but no. She was lying perfectly still, eyes closed, lips parted just enough to let that terrible chuckle escape. And the voice. It wasn't hers. It dragged like sandpaper, too deep, too smooth, far too old to belong to a child. It echoed off the walls, but somehow remained contained to her tiny frame, like a speaker broadcasting from somewhere far away. "Eliza," I whispered, stepping closer. The laughter stopped. Dead silence. I waited, heartbeat drumming in my ears. Then suddenly, she gasped, just a small intake of breath, and turned over, facing the wall. I backed away slowly, not wanting to disturb whatever presence had just receded. I didn't sleep the rest of the night. I sat in the hallway with every light on, just watching her door. It didn't open. It didn't move, but something in me had shifted. The next morning, I decided to test her. I asked her what she dreamed about. She blinked. "I don't remember." Did I have a dream? She was calm, too calm, like someone rehearsing a part. Her eyes didn't quite meet mine. That's when I noticed a drawing on the fridge. I hadn't seen it before. Crayon on printer paper. A crude image of our house. The roof, the windows, the little chimney. But there were 3 figures inside. Me, Eliza, and something tall, black, and faceless standing in her room. "What's this, honey?" I asked as gently as I could. "Oh, I don't know," she said, biting into her toast. "He just asked me to draw it." I felt my spine stiffen. "Who did?" She shrugged. "The man who visits when I'm sleeping." Her voice was light, casual, as if she were talking about a teacher or a neighbor. But I couldn't find words. I simply nodded and told her it was very creative. I kept watching her after that. Things began to shift in the house. The rocking chair in the living room began to sway gently at night. Even though no windows were open, the TV would switch on by itself, displaying nothing but static at exactly 2:17 a.m. The hallway mirror, once clear now, had a thin, cloudy smear across the glass. I tried cleaning it. It came back the next night, and every morning, Elisa had another drawing. Always the same dark figure, sometimes closer to her, sometimes inside her room. Once, standing beside me while I slept, my hands began to tremble without warning. I avoided mirrors, flinching whenever I caught a glimpse of myself. My dreams blurred with reality, and the air in the house seemed to grow thicker, like walking through syrup. And yet, I told no one, because something in me whispered that speaking it aloud would invite it in deeper, and I feared it was already too late for that. The sound that shouldn't exist that night. I didn't sleep. I couldn't. I sat by Eliza's door with a flashlight in one hand and my phone recording in the other. If this thing was real, whatever it was, it had a pattern. It came at 2:17 a.m. It used her. It spoke through her. And it wanted me to notice. The house was silent except for the soft mechanical hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen and the ticking of the clock in the hallway. 2:16. The air changed. Heavier, colder. I could feel the pressure in my ears shift, like the altitude had suddenly dropped. To 17 at first, there was only a low static. Not from a device, just from the air. Like my ears were tuned into a station that didn't exist. Then came the sound. Not Eliza. Not quite. It sounded like her. The cadence, the rhythm, the childish tone. But something was wrong. Every word was too precise. Every syllable lingered just a fraction too long. "Mommy, open the door." I froze. She was sleeping. I knew she was sleeping. I hadn't heard. The creak of the mattress, the rustle of blankets, nothing. "Mommy, you left the door open." I hadn't. I never left her door open. The voice was barely audible, like it was behind thick glass. Still, it echoed inside me like a scream in a cathedral. I reached out and slowly turned the doorknob. The room was dark, too dark. Darker than it should have been, with the hallway light spilling in. Eliza lay there, still and peaceful, her mouth slightly parted, not moving. But the voice came again. "Mommy, why don't you look under the bed?" It wasn't a suggestion. It was a command. A chill ran up my spine, as though cold hands had traced every vertebra. I pointed the flashlight toward the floor, slowly kneeling. My breath was shallow, my limbs heavy. I crouched, trembled, peered underneath. Nothing, just shadows, and then a whisper. Right beside my ear, so close I could feel the breath, but nothing was there. He's not here for her. I stumbled back, dropping the flashlight, which rolled and cast wild, spinning beams around the room. For a second, just a split second, I saw something in the corner, a tall shape, featureless, watching, not there, but implied, like a shadow of something that never left the page. When I blinked, it was gone. Eliza stirred in her sleep and whispered something. I leaned in, hand shaking, gripping the phone again. She said, "He wants your name." I shut the door and ran to my room, locking it behind me. When I played back the recording the next day, it was mostly silence. But at 2:17 a.m., static erupted, and then, something else, not Eliza, not me, a voice low, dry, repeating the same phrase over and over. "We remember her." I don't know what it means, but it's not over, it's just beginning. The presence. Without a face, I stopped counting how many nights it had been. Sleep had become a fragile illusion, broken by every creak, every breath that didn't belong. Even in daylight, the house carried a strange silence, like it was listening, waiting. And Eliza, she was changing, slowly, subtly. She still smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes anymore. When she spoke, her words were correct, as if someone was practicing how to sound human. One morning, I caught her staring at her reflection in the hallway mirror. She didn't blink, didn't move, just stood there for nearly 10 minutes, her lips forming silent shapes. I asked her what she was doing. She turned to me and said, in a sing-song voice, "He doesn't like mirrors." Then she walked away. That afternoon, I threw a sheet over the mirror, but at night, the sheet would always be on the floor, and the mirror would be clean, polished, fingerprints inside the glass. I tried to keep busy, cleaned obsessively, rearranged furniture, lit candles, anything to reclaim control of my space. But the more I tried, the more things slipped. I'd find cabinet doors ajar, though I was sure I closed them. Light bulbs flickering, one by one, then burning out completely. The radio in the kitchen turning on by itself, playing nothing but whispers, and breathing. Even my dog, Baxter, normally brave and loyal, refused to enter Eliza's room. He'd sit at the door and growl low in his throat, his eyes locked on the darkness beyond. But nothing frightened me more than the chair, the rocking chair in the nursery. It belonged to my grandmother. It never creaked, never moved, till this started now. Every night at exactly 2:17, it rocked, gently, back and forth, like someone was seated there, waiting patiently. I once tried to stop it, mid-rock, bracing it with both hands. It fought me not with violence, but with intention. A subtle, slow force pushing back, as if to say, "You are not in control here." And always I felt it watching. I could never see it, but it was there. I'd walk into a room and feel the air pull slightly against me, like something had just moved. I'd whisper Eliza's name when she slept, and the response would come in a voice that wasn't hers. Sometimes not even human. Low clicks, breaths, gurgles. Once, a voice that mimicked my mother, who passed 5 years ago, said, "Don't look behind you." I didn't, but I cried until dawn. I no longer trusted the silence. It was never empty. It was full of presence. Something old, patient, and faceless. Something that didn't want me dead yet. It wanted me aware, and now I was. The unspoken warning. The house had begun to feel like a throat tight, suffocating, and ready to swallow me whole. Time lost its rhythm, days blurred. I found myself watching the shadows on the walls more than the clock. They danced now, but not with the wind or passing cars. They moved with purpose, and Eliza's sleep-talking had evolved. She no longer whispered fragmented phrases or mimicked voices. She spoke in complete sentences, now but never in her own language. Not English, not anything I recognized. A soft, murmured string of words that clicked and hummed like insects forming speech. It made my skin crawl to hear her. I tried to record it again. This time, when I played it back, the file was corrupted, black screen, no sound, until the last second, where a voice, not hers, clearly whispered, "He is almost through." Through what? The question consumed me. I stayed awake longer. I watched her sleep. I noted everything. What time the murmuring started, how long it lasted, which words repeated. It was all the same, until one night, at exactly 2:17. She sat up, fully eyes, still closed, and pointed to the wall. "The door is not where you think it is," she said. "He walks where walls pretend to end." Then she slowly turned her head and looked directly at my eyes still shut. "He was yours before I came." I couldn't move. It was like every muscle in my body had turned to ice. A primal instinct screamed inside me not to respond, not to speak, just listen. Then she lay back down, peacefully, as if none of it had happened. The next morning, something was different in the hallway. A picture frame that had hung for years was now crooked. When I lifted it to straighten it, I found something. Underneath, a small mark on the wall, a symbol, etched faintly in black. It looked like an eye, with a mouth beneath it. I touched it. The light bulb above me burst. I screamed, dropped the frame, and staggered back. Eliza came running, her hands over her ears. "Make it stop," she cried. "He doesn't like when you find things." The symbol was gone when I looked again, but I knew what it meant. This wasn't random. This was a pattern, a game, maybe, a test. He was giving me breadcrumbs, luring me, measuring how far I'd go, because he wanted me to find him, and I had taken the first step. Whether I wanted to or not, the moment of truth had gone beyond fear now. What I felt wasn't panic, or even dreaded, was anticipation, like the quiet pause before something ancient unfolds. I started dreaming of doors, not physical ones, but doors without hinges or shape, just thresholds, floating in endless dark. In every dream, I'd hear Eliza whispering from the other side, but it was never her voice that answered back. Sometimes, I'd wake up with dirt under my nails. One night, there were wet leaves in my bed. Another, I found my feet muddy, though I hadn't left the house. And always, at 2:17, the rocking chair moved. Even after I nailed it to the floor. Yes, I nailed it, for thick iron nails. The next night, I found it turned to face the wall and the nails were lined up neatly on the carpet, each one clean, polished, smiling, almost. That morning, I finally confronted Eliza. She was brushing her doll's hair at the table, humming something soft and off-key. "Eliza," I said, "what do you remember from your dreams?" She paused, her brush mid-stroke. "I don't dream, Mommy." I sat beside her, my voice shaking. "Then what happens when you sleep?" She smiled sweetly, not looking up. "He dreams instead." I felt everything inside me collapse. I tried to stand, but my legs gave out. She kept brushing. Later that evening, I made my decision. If this presence wanted me to follow its pattern, then I would. Not because I trusted it, but because I needed to understand what I was protecting Eliza from. That night, I stayed awake. I waited until 2:17. The chair rocked, and for the first time, I didn't look away. Instead, I whispered, "What do you want?" The rocking stopped. The air turned thick, like breathing through water. And in that moment, the silence spoke. Not through sound, but understanding. A message placed directly into my mind, like a thought I hadn't formed. This is not about want, it is about return. Then the bedroom wall clicked, just once. A sharp, hollow sound, like a lock inside stone. I turned to see the paint rippling slightly, a distortion like heat rising off asphalt, and then it stopped. I approached slowly, placing my palm on the wall. It was cold, not like normal cold, but empty. Void, and I felt it again. A choice, retreat and pretend. None of this had ever happened. Or go deeper. Invite the unknown. I stared at the wall, listening to the deep quiet behind it. That was no longer just drywall and wood. It was the thin veil between here and there, and it had begun to wear thin. The inevitability of darkness the next day was made of silence, the kind that presses into your skin, not absence of sound, but presence of waiting. I barely spoke. Eliza didn't eat. The house had turned hollow, like a stage set long after the actors had gone home. Only we hadn't left yet. I knew I wouldn't sleep that night. I couldn't, because I had made a decision. I would go to the wall. I didn't know what that meant. I just knew it was where all of this led. The voice, the chair, Eliza's sleep-talking, the whisper that said he is almost through. I couldn't wait for him to come. I had to meet him halfway. So when the clock crept toward to 17, I stood in front of the wall with a flashlight in one hand and the symbol I'd redrawn in the other. The eye with the mouth below it. It didn't look like a warning anymore. It looked like an invitation as the second hand landed on 217. The temperature dropped. The flashlight flickered, and behind me, the rocking chair moved just once. I reached out, placed my hand flat against the center of the wall. No sound, no wind, no crack. But then it gave way. Not like wood splintering, not like drywall breaking. It breathed. The surface pulsed, pulled inward slightly, and I was drawn into it. Not swallowed, not teleported, just entered, as if the wall had never been solid. And on the other side, it wasn't darkness, it was stillness. A long silent hallway, no windows, just endless gray, as though someone had sketched the world in pencil and erased all detail. The walls pulsed faintly, like distant thunder and skin, and at the far end a shape, tall, thin, unmoving. It had no face, no hands, but I knew it was looking at me, and worse, I recognized it. Not from a dream, from memories I didn't know were mine. It stepped forward, not walking, becoming closer, and then, without sound, it reached up and pulled something from the wall behind it. A small, cracked mirror. Inside the glass, I saw myself, but not here, not in the hallway. I was back in my bedroom, rocking in the chair, smiling alone, and behind me, the real Eliza, motionless, eyes open, staring. I dropped the mirror. It didn't fall, it vanished, before hitting the floor. The shape came closer. I didn't move. I couldn't. And then it spoke without sound, without words. You opened the door, you do not close it. I understood. This wasn't about hauntings or ghosts. This was inheritance, and I had accepted it. The fear that stars. I awoke in my bed, drenched in sweat. The clock read to 18. Just 1 minute had passed. I bolted upright, heart thundering against my ribs, lungs aching as if I'd been underwater for hours. The wall was whole. The chair sat still. Everything looked normal, but I wasn't. I wasn't sure I was me anymore. Down the hallway, I heard a familiar giggle. Eliza's laugh. But it was wrong. Slower, muffled, like it echoed off walls that didn't exist. I followed it, each step heavier than the last. The hallway felt longer now, shadows stretching wider than they should. Every picture on the wall turned slightly askew as if they were watching me pass. Eliza stood at the end of the hallway, her back to me. She was humming the same tune from the night before. "Eliza," I whispered. She turned slowly. Her smile was perfect, too perfect. Her eyes, still brown, still hers. But deep in those pupils, I saw something ripple like ink spreading through water. "I'm hungry," she said, sweetly. I hesitated. Hungry for what? She tilted her head. He said you would understand. I didn't, but I nodded anyway, because the truth was it didn't matter anymore. From that night forward, Eliza was never quite the same. Not evil, not possessed, just changed. Like a version of her from another place had come home wearing her skin. She still laughed, but never when she was alone. She still played, but only facing mirrors, and sometimes when the house is too quiet and the air too still, I'll hear her voice from her bedroom, conversing, not in her tone, not with herself. And if I open the door I'll see her lips still, but the voice keeps speaking. Not to me, to the wall, to him, and the worst part, I don't stop it. I've tried, I've moved, burned the chair, buried the mirror, changed rooms, but every night, to 17 returns. He returns, not with violence, not with chaos, but with that calm certainty that this is no longer my home, it's his, and we're merely allowed to exist within its memory. Now, I sleep with the lights on, but it doesn't help, because the fear isn't in the dark anymore. It's in the silence that follows, and in the question that never leaves. If that voice isn't Eliza's, whose is it now? What do you think really happened to Eliza, and to her mother? Let me know your thoughts in the comments and, if you dare, explore another tale before bed. Sometimes, the next story finds you.